Welcome to the Money Insights Podcast, where high-income earners come to learn wealth-building strategies that will take them from high income to high net worth. With your hosts, financial and wealth-building experts, Christian Allen and Rod Zabriskie.
Welcome into today's episode of the Money Insights Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Allen. With me, as almost always, it's Rod the Pod Zabriskie. Rod, what's up, man?
Hey, I am doing great. And I know
and
it's been
what?
a little while. I feel like I've been letting people down because I haven't had news from the family. It's been a couple of months, but it just
You're
feels
like
a
okay,
drought.
I created this large family for the purpose of making sure that I can give consistent, significant updates on the pod.
Yep.
That was the primary purpose.
That's
This
exactly
is what you
what
started
happened.
doing. This is well before
Way-
podcasts even
yeah.
existed, but
I was thinking ahead.
you had it. You had it in there. It's okay, Rod. It's just the way it goes, right? Ebbs and flows.
But I have news.
Okay, news.
So our son Parker, he's the one that graduated from Weber State here in December, and
Shout out to Parker.
he is off on an amazing adventure. We talked about this before. He graduated in zoology and birds specifically. So he is now, as we speak, in the great state of Alabama, doing some cool stuff, tracking birds, doing stuff with Alabama A&M. Anyway, it's kind of a fun
All
thing.
right, super cool. Okay, well, he's like a professional birder now.
He is. He gets paid to do it.
Paid birder, man, that is something. It's like, is that like your secondary dream, Rod, to get paid for birding, or do you just like to do it on the side as a hobby?
I do it on the side as a hobby, and I think, if I'm honest, I think he's a little bit worried about it becoming too mundane,
work.
too everyday, work. Yeah.
Like work. Yeah, he wants to enjoy it, and so that's
knowing
the benefit.
him. I don't know that it ever becomes that. I just think he gets excited about it every day. But yeah, we'll see.
Okay, well, cool. Can I just tell? This is a good basically intro into the pod.
All right.
Because I was thinking about the thing that comes to my mind when you're telling me that is I'm thinking good for him for living his best life, for being able to enjoy what he's doing day in and day out. That's so much better than I don't want to say what I was taught. I don't know. My dad did tell me, he's like, okay, Christian, I'm a CPA, don't become a CPA. He just told me explicitly,
straight out,
don't do it. You don't want anything to do. And I was like, okay, so my dad doesn't he was skilled in what he did, but he didn't want me to be a CPA. So I stayed away from that. But I also, and I would say my parents did instill in me the belief that I could kind of do whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I still think at our generation, it was more about just, you got to go to school. It doesn't matter if you like that or not. You just kind of got to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And then you got to find the best job that pays you the best money, because the goal is to retire in 30 years at 65, but you've got to make sure you get paid well so that you can have the chance to do that. So,
and the only way to do that is go to school, get good grades.
Yes.
Get the degree, yeah.
Well, okay. So the same principle that applies here is those same principles apply to wealth building, right? Yeah. We have this kind of mantra that's been taught to us. And it's really cool to see Parker in this situation, bucking that trend and doing something that he loves. I know that's not this brand new thing, but I would much rather my kids find something that they love to do. And of course, getting paid well to do it is important. But man, it's just so great to see our kids getting to a place where they're just genuinely doing things that they love, and they're being good, productive humans, all of those positive things. So if you can bring the best of those worlds together, anyway, huge props to Parker. Okay. So Rod, that brings us into our pod for today. We're talking about redefining wealth. So over the last few weeks, maybe the last month or so, I've been trying to adjust the way that I post on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's been kind of one of our focuses in terms of social media growth. And obviously we have Kat that we brought on, who's got this huge following. So we're working together to build out LinkedIn, but I really felt like I didn't love that. I want to be disruptive, right? We want to be disruptive because we believe in doing things a little bit differently. We're going to talk more about that, but I also wanted it to be more positive. And sometimes I felt like disruptive came across like this is bad, everything else is negative. And so this adjustment in my brain has been like, how can we still be disruptive and focus on the principles that we really believe in, and not just that we believe in, that we've seen consistently from working with thousands of high income earners over the last decade. Like, how can we do that and still focus on the positive, right?
Yeah.
Focus on the aspirational, the inspirational. So today we're going to talk about redefining wealth. And one of the core principles that I've been talking about is this idea that money and wealth are not synonymous, or wealth doesn't just necessarily, like, being wealthy isn't just about money. It's more than that, right? I think that anybody that like has money and has been in that place knows that, like, we know that money doesn't directly buy happiness. It also doesn't directly buy freedom. So it's not even just about like, okay, freedom equals happiness. That's an element, but money doesn't necessarily buy freedom. The way that we use our money, which could mean that we have to make systems and we have to learn how to delegate, like all these elements that come into place, those are all part of creating like the best life, the freedom that we want to create the income, create the flow of money while simultaneously building and enjoying our life, living the best life we can. So that's what we're talking about, Rod. Okay.
Positive.
We're going. Okay. So the first point I just want to emphasize is this: wealth isn't just about your net worth. It's not about your retirement savings. Wealth is about more than that. So when I say that, Rod, what does wealth mean to you? When you think about it, like on an individual basis, I'm not even talking about projecting to your clients. Like for you, when you think about wealth, what does it mean? And kind of what does that freedom look like for Rod individually?
Yeah. Well, I think about a lot of things. I mean, family is huge, obviously, to me. And so,
and most people
I would say that's true. So having time with them, different experiences, memories, etc., is huge. And the good news is we were able to do a lot of those things back when we were like really in the poorhouse, like we were just getting started
still doing it. Yeah.
And building it up. And I feel like, anyway, children may or may not agree, hopefully they would, but that we've had a pretty good life, right? And so I can attach wealth of experience of relationships to that.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that comes to mind. And then the second one is things like health and just overall, I don't know, comfort may not even be the right word, because it's not that I just want to be comfortable, right? I want to, again, all the different experiences, different things that we can do.
It's about quality of life more than just about standard of living.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's the overall quality, where you're not saying like, hey, I just need to stay in the nicest hotels or do these. And then of course, anyone that knows Rod knows that's not Rod. So like nobody's accusing you of doing that. But I just think that's an important distinction, that difference between standard of living, which, you know, we all want to have a comfortable standard of living. But that again isn't what I think most of us would consider is like the wealth that we're like, that wealth and freedom that we're all looking for. You know what I mean? It's just one element of the whole. Okay. So the thing that we're not going to forget as we talk about this stuff, Rod, we're not going to get too into the philosophical. We're going to get a little bit, but we're not going to like delve totally outside of our strategy. We still have to talk about how we believe we get there. Okay.
Yeah.
So a few principles that I think are, and maybe what we should do is, again, distinguish very clearly from the traditional path. So earlier you talked about Parker going on this path. You kind of compared and contrasted, I guess, for lack of a better word, the difference between like a typical path and, or maybe I should say it this way, the path that we had been taught in the past and something different. So do the same thing with our wealth. Give us kind of the framework again for what we typically see. And then we're going to get into the principles that we believe are far more effective at creating this kind of overall quality of life that we want.
Yeah. Well, let's start with the word investing. And I would say you just go pick people off the street and say, use the word investing in any format, and they're almost always going to think about the stock market in some form, 401k, IRA, brokerage account. and rate of return.
Mhm.
And those are really the only focus. Like I don't hear people talk a lot about, maybe a little bit about the tax side of it as it relates to, I put the money in the 401k because it's all pre-tax, right?
Yeah.
And yet, as we've
Maybe.
talked about it many times, it feels like it's kind of a half-baked idea at the individual level because they're just doing it because that's whatever Dave Ramsey told them they should, or because their HR director said you got to be responsible and
It's
do
right
this.
there. It's available.
Right? Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing. So it's like this path from one of these concepts that we've been fed through just through typical media.
Mm-hmm.
And we go from one thing to the next, right? 401ks, life insurance fits into that category. You could also get into this kind of difference between alternative assets and traditional. Like it's like
Mm-hmm.
literally flipped that concept on its head to where people think of the stuff that's been around forever as like the risky alternative out there stuff instead of, this market thing that we have that's only been around for the last 100 years.
Yeah. And so the reason I started there is because there is so much more to investing than just obviously the stock market, but then even just rate of return, right? And we hit on this all the time. So it won't be a surprise to people when we start talking about things like cash flow, leverage, liquidity, right? Velocity,
Yep.
these principles where when I focus only on the return, I might miss out on these things, even though when you're employing them, it's all building to increase your return, right? But so often the focus is, I invest in this stock and this was the return it gave me, right? Or my average rate of return over the last 10 years has been XYZ, but it's only measured by whatever the market did or whatever my portfolio did, right? Not thinking about the other things outside of it, which on that side, if you're only in the traditional market, that's lost opportunity cost. Because if you could have been doing other things, using the leverage, using the cash flow, the tax benefits, et cetera, then, well, you would have had a much better rate of return, right? But you were only focused on the one thing.
Yeah, ironically, you lost out, like you're spiting yourself and not even realizing it, right?
Yep.
So the thing that stands out to me, Rod, is the biggest flaw in the traditional system, which is primarily based on discipline and deferring like gratification, delayed gratification, which again, we've been taught our whole lives that that's really the way that you achieve anything of value, right?
Yeah.
We work really hard. We avoid doing the things that we love and want to and spending money and like doing that. That's kind of what I mean. It's maybe not that explicit, but kind of, right? Like
Sure.
it's try to live in this box as long as you can so that at some future point you get to come out of the box and live this free, great life.
Yep.
Well, that to me is like the biggest flaw in traditional wealth building, because what I believe and what I think we see every single day is people who spend money on the things that they love today. They do the things that they enjoy. They spend time going on, traveling and vacations, doing other things while they're simultaneously making a great income and creating incredible wealth that they can pass on to their family. So it's almost like we've been taught that it's this one way or the other situation, when in reality, we can actually have the best of both worlds or the best of all of these worlds just by being more strategic about the way that we're thinking about wealth, right? It can't just be about, I get a buck, I put it in the market, hope the market performs. Like that is absolutely not going to build massive wealth unless you're just like crushing it with income. I mean, if you have a $10 million income, you're probably going to build massive wealth no matter what, right? But if you're talking about somebody that's making $700,000 or $800,000, that is not the way to build the $20-30 million net worth. You're going to end up having $3 or $4 million in a 401k at the time you want to retire, and thinking, how do I replace my $800,000 income? Like that's just not
the
the way to
broker's
do
going to
it.
tell you, nah, 4%, buddy.
You can't. We're gonna have to bring it down, right?
Yeah.
And so like it's just such a flawed system overall. And I think the reason that it's flawed is not just that we think we have to like that delayed gratification element, which again, I don't want to suggest that like working hard and having a goal and defer, like those are all positive things, but sometimes we can take those things to extremes. And in my mind, being like, hey, start at 25, make sure that you just push all your money into your 4 and you're ready to actually be like, live your best life at 65. To me, that's too extreme. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, we have to like just kind of flip the script and start thinking about it differently, because it just does not have to be an either or. And we can still like do all of the things we want to do. We can still like build massive wealth and still like give our family wealth. Like there's just nothing we can't do if we are willing to just kind of tweak our mindset and do these things you're talking about. So let's get into those, Rod. So you brought up some of those principles that we consistently talk about. Liquidity, right? That's one that is constantly a challenge. Like the liquidity that most people, that the traditional system teaches is like, make sure that you have 3 to 6 months of income somewhere where, but like the reality is, one, if you get in a really difficult situation, that's not enough, right? And then number 2, it's not giving you opportunity to take advantage of opportunity as it comes. So like if all of my money is going into my qualified plans and I've got my 3 to 6 months of income, like, well, what happens when I have a really great opportunity, whether it's a business, whether it's an investment, or whatever, like now I can't take advantage of it just because I'm illiquid, right? That's the typical model. Well, obviously that's a problem. We believe that we want to make sure that we build our wealth in places that give us opportunity, and I should say create liquidity, so that we can take advantage of whatever opportunities come up. And of course, simultaneously, we believe in continuously be looking for opportunities. And again, another flaw in the system, we set it and forget it. We put our money in that 401k defined benefit plan. And once it's there, we're like, well, I don't have to think about wealth in any way anymore. I'll just worry about it when I'm 65. Whew, I'm really on one, Rod.
Well, but I like the direction you're going. And here's something that I thought of as you were talking through that, especially because of this whole kind of positive approach. Because when we have talked about, we've done some kind of Dave Ramsey podcasts where we say, hey, this is where he's really, we've kind of leading people astray. And what's interesting about that is that it's the extreme on both sides. So in other words, because he talks about the whole idea of, delayed gratification, live like no one else, so you can later on live like no one else.
Live
right?
like no one else. Yep. And,
but at the same time, he's teaching people to be so cautious and so, on the other end of the extreme in terms of debt, right? And these kinds of things, that it then hinders them from actually building the wealth that they ultimately could. But what I hear you saying is, well, let's find a happy place in the middle, right? We don't have to assume that just because someone can tap into debt that they'll be completely irresponsible with it, right? Let's use it in responsible ways. And again, that's one example.
That mindset drives me absolutely off the wall.
Yeah, let's go somewhere in the middle.
It's like almost disrespectful because it like in my, I know that sounds a little bit extreme there, but like in my mind, it says like, it says, I don't think you're smart enough or like have enough discipline to be able to do things the best way. So you should just do it this way. That's what I hear him saying.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work for me.
And there I did it. I brought some of that negative in, but I wanted to contrast it. To basically say, no, to say, I like the approach right now. Again, I did want to contrast it against that, because you're putting a positive, I don't want to say spin, like a positive angle to that conversation. And I like it.
Yeah. Okay. So one other thought that I should just kind of put on there, I kept talking about like, I kind of focused on the money element, but I also want to just emphasize that to me, freedom and wealth is about spending time doing the things that you want to do, that you love to do, the things that matter to you, right? So freedom isn't necessarily about walking away from work. I think that's kind of an old view of it, right? I think most people want to do something that they want to be productive. They want to live a life that's like, again, good standard, like a high quality of life, high standard of living, and something that's really impactful for people. And those are all the things that we can do if we focus on those right principles. So we talked about liquidity. Cash flow is a huge one, right? We always kind of take this contrasting view of cash flow as the way to build wealth because it creates a level of freedom that's really difficult to get if I'm doing that traditional system where I'm just kind of building this nest egg and hoping that the market performs. Like and that goes into one of the other principles, maybe the key principle that we've been emphasizing, and that's control. Like at some level, what's happening in the traditional system, we're just giving up our own control of things, and therefore we're giving up the ability to build massive wealth. So again, what's really almost sad and what's happening, I should say it's sad on one side and really exciting and powerful for some people, is that you have those kind of the people who are following that traditional model. Let's say they're making the $1 million income. Well, they're getting to retirement with, like I talked about, $3, $4, $5 million of cash in a defined benefit plan and maybe a $7 or $8 million net worth. Meanwhile, you've got somebody else doing what we're talking about here, and they're getting to the same at that same later point in time. If I take it 30 years out, they're getting to the 20, 30, $40 million net worth with the exact same income levels. And I would argue that they're typically doing more, enjoying their lives more, and typically having more impact. So again, it's just kind of flipping the script on that traditional world. And I think now I'm preaching to a group of people here who already kind of know this. So maybe I'm preaching to the preacher. I always like that saying, or preaching to the choir, but it took me a long time to figure out what it meant. So I was like, what does that mean? Shouldn't we be like preaching to the preacher instead? But I learned eventually. Anyway, I'm probably preaching to the choir in this case, because most of the people here totally get that. Like, one of the beauties of the world that we play in is that when we meet with people, they almost already have made at least a partial mindset shift to get into this space, right? And that's a really exciting, fun place for us to be in, because while we teach and we talk about the contrasting styles, like, we get to live in the space that's like abundance and growth, and we're seeing people doing this stuff every day. But I also think it's what makes us passionate about trying to help bring the people who don't know that stuff yet over to the good side. We'll call it the good side.
I like it, for sure. Yeah. And that's why we can speak with a lot of confidence in doing it. Like, again, we're trying to live this, but we don't do it perfectly either. We learn from people every day, and our mind shift gets moved and I don't know, shaped to ultimately where we want to be going.
Okay, Rod, I have a couple other places I want to go with on this.
Okay.
Number one is, we've talked about the print. Okay, so leverage, velocity, cash flow, all the things we talk about in our invest with benefits framework, like those are the things that we want to be moving toward, right? The other thing that I think is an emphasis is, like, I just genuinely believe that the most significant wealth that I've seen built is through personal businesses. Right now, again, and I want to emphasize this, my business could be my investment career, could be another business, and that could be like something that's really prolific. But just my experience is that people who are building businesses oftentimes are building greater wealth. And I think it's because of this. One of my posts was about this just the other day. It's about how one of the critical keys to building wealth is about building systems, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just about the individual investments. We obviously believe that we want to at least put a portion of our money into the alternative space, right? We always talk about how there's a place for the stock market. And I do genuinely believe that. Like, I'll say it until I blue in the face, till I'm blue in the face, even though people know that, like, we emphasize alternatives so much, I still have a significant amount of money that's in the market. And to me, that works in that space, right? So I just want to emphasize that. On the flip side, we want to make sure that people who aren't already doing that are learning about this because of the missed opportunity, the lost opportunity cost from not knowing that it's available, not knowing about the things that you talked about, the liquidity, the control, the cash flow, the tax optimization, all of these things that could be allowing them to live their best life today and grow the wealth that they want to. So we've got to mention businesses, we've got to mention systems, because I just genuinely believe that that's what it's more about. And if I can do that, we're seeing it every day. You can live that free. And again, it's not irresponsible. Like, I don't want to suggest that, like, living that life today means that I'm irresponsible with money. I would actually suggest that it's the opposite, because I've done these things, because I'm living these principles, it's giving me the opportunity to have that freedom today and still build that wealth for tomorrow.
Yeah, it's balance.
Balance,
You're taking care of tomorrow, but you're also living today. You're not delaying life while you scrimp and don't live the life. So yeah, I like it.
Okay, so my advice for everybody is live your best life today. Do it using alternative investments, because it will just make everything so much better. Rod, do you have any closing thoughts for us?
I want to build a little bit on what you said about systems, because I think that's a huge thing. And you were doing it in the context of business, which of course, a successful business has to have efficient systems.
Successful investing does too.
And yes, exactly. That's where I wanted to go, because and I remember the post, you're basically emphasizing this idea that yes, the individual investments matter, but if the only thing I'm ever doing is just kind of rolling down the road, and as I see different things come along, it's like, oh yeah, I'll take some of that. I'll take some of that. But it's just kind of willy nilly. I'm not methodical in the way that I'm doing it. That's not the worst thing in the world, but it's also not optimizing it in the way that you can if you build systems around it. So being very intentional about the way that I invest, how I'm choosing what I'm going to invest in, and diversifying, again, a lot of these things that we talk about, but those principles can be captured within the system, so that yes, I'm building cash flow, but does every investment I put in have to be cash flowing? Well, of course not, especially if I'm not ready to start using that cash flow. We talk about leverage. Do I have to use leverage in it? Well, of course not. Again, balance, right? The idea is, let's not take too extreme of a view on any individual piece. And that's how a system, a method, can let you be thoughtful about it, be methodical, and then put those principles into action as you're rolling down and actually putting the plan and the system into action.
And typically, from our experience, building that cohesive system is actually simultaneously going to build you like significantly more wealth than you would build otherwise. Mm-hmm. So build a system. Okay, this has been a fun episode. We're going to keep it short and sweet. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Money Insights podcast. To learn more about the financial and business strategies discussed in this show, please visit moneyinsights.net. The views and opinions expressed on the Money Insights podcast are not intended to be individual financial, tax, or legal advice. Always consult with the appropriate advisor before making financial decisions. And if you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This will help others find the show and learn wealth-building strategies for themselves. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.